Hello, can you hear
Yay.
me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yay! Yes,
Yay.
I can. Let her know we are fine now. Got it. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Good morning, Avery. I
Good
am
morning.
so excited that you're here with us today.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
Yay, super yay. So just welcome to our webinar. We have this webinar every other week, Tuesdays at REI USA. And just to introduce you to the group, guys, Avery is a rock star. I know her from a women's real estate investing club that we're both a member of, and she is just an amazing real estate agent. She was listed as one of the top 100 agents at Wall Street Journal in 2020. So award winning for sure. And so everyone here is a real estate investor or aspiring real estate investor. So before getting started, I just want to address the elephant in the room. So we all know that it's a little bit tricky, right? Dealing with real estate agents. And not all the time do you encounter an investor friendly real estate agent.
Correct.
Exactly. And the beauty of it is Avery specializes in connecting investors with short-term rentals that have the highest potential ROI. So not only is she an investor-friendly real estate agent, she even niched into a niche of short-term rentals, vacation rentals. So super, super thrilled about that. And so a little bit of my background, Avery. So when I started looking for a short-term rental years ago, or a vacation rental years ago, I thought, okay, let me do the obvious thing, right? Let me contact my real estate agent. And it's a whole different ball game,
Yes, it
right?
is.
Dealing with a
Indeed.
day-to-day real estate agent versus, a real estate agent that's looking for a single family home. So my real estate agent was focused on square footage and schools and things like that. Whereas a vacation rental real estate agent is going to understand those income projections and how many can I sleep versus just square footage, how the configuration is, and so on and so forth. And so I had to kind of hodgepodge my way around to figure out how to do it myself because there weren't any real estate agents in my circle that really understood short-term rentals. So let me let you just jump in. How did you get started with your investing in short-term rentals? Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So I had a corporate gig. My real estate investing story is really similar to a lot of people's. I was working in the music business in Nashville as a marketing manager. I was making $37,000 a year. And the way that I did buy a long-term rental first. We didn't really even know what we were doing, didn't really even know it was called real estate investing at that point. And that went really well. So we actually still have that one. That one cash flows over $1,000 a month on top of the mortgage. Some people get confused about what cash flow means, but over the mortgage, over the expenses. And we had like one down payment worth of capital left. And we thought, okay, well, what can we buy that is going to make the most amount of money so that we can go buy more rentals faster? And we didn't want to so we landed on short-term rentals, obviously, but we didn't want to do it in Nashville because the regulations in Nashville are just way too cray. So we said, all right, well, where can we go that we're not going to have to worry about these regulations and we can just, do this. So we landed on the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee. So Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, Sevierville area. And we did what is called a vacation home loan where you only have to put 10% down. There's a few stipulations that you have to meet with lending in order for that to work. So this is not lending advice, check with your loan officer, but we did a 10% down vacation home loan and got a cabin in the Smokies. And that went really, really well. Long story short, we scaled that into 5 short-term rentals within about the next year. Fast forward 5 years, I have just south of 50 doors. 6 of them are short-term rentals. I'm under contract on 2 more short-term rentals. We personally stick to the vacation rental market. So our places are in the Smokies, the like Destin area, 30A. We've got one in Cape San Blas that we're under contract on now. And so my real estate firm is also in those areas. So we're in the Smokies, the Florida Panhandle. So everything from like the Alabama state line, Perdido Beach, all the way over to Alligator Point, which is just a little southwest of Tallahassee, and Blue Ridge, Georgia, and Gulf Shores, Alabama. And we're going to add a few more to that, to our office list coming up here pretty soon, probably a couple North Carolina markets next. So that's what we do. We work only with short-term rental investors. We don't sell any primary homes. We don't sell any long-term rentals, just short-term rentals. So I fell into that because when I first started, I had the same problem as you. I didn't actually have my real estate license at the time. And even though I was looking in a short-term rental heavy market, there were just not really any agents that knew how to analyze the property or could tell me things like, oh, what do you think this property should make? They would just say, oh, go call Cabins USA and they'll give you a projection. Well, I didn't want to use a property manager. I wanted to do it myself, which is what my firm teaches our clients as well. So if you use us as your buyer's agent, we'll teach you how to manage it. And so you don't have to pay a property manager. So I just kind of filled that gap in my market. I became the agent who could help you do those kinds of things. And it is really important, I think, touching on what you said about not many agents knowing about investments, like you really do have to do your homework when you're going to buy, especially if it's out of state, on the agent, because you really cannot just go click on Zillow, on a link on Zillow and say, work with this agent, because that doesn't tell you anything about the agent. That is just a person who's paying Zillow $1,500 a month to put their face right there. So that could be anybody. They could, they could do no deals. They could do only primaries. So you really do have to ask an agent, like, okay, how many deals did you do last year? Especially in a really, really hot real estate market like we're in right now, where everything is multiple offers. An agent who only sold like 4 deals last year is not going to be the best choice, because since real estate is such a relationship game, it's an agent who did like 100 deals last year. Well, that is 100 relationships with all the other agents that they worked with on the other side of the deal. So if you use a busy agent who does a lot of transactions, they're going to have the best relationships with all the other agents in the market, so that if in a multiple offer situation, if a bunch of offers are similar, yours will probably get chosen because that agent has worked with them before. So that's really important also. And then also ask them, how many investment deals do you do a year? If they sold 100 deals last year, but only 4 of them were investments, well, that doesn't do anything for you either. So you just really have to make sure you're asking the right questions to make sure that you have the best agent for you. Because just because an agent answers the phone every time you call, that doesn't tell me that's necessarily the best agent. That just tells me that's the agent that has the most time and the least amount of clients. So you really do have to find like a balance of, are they busy? If they're busy, they probably know what they're doing because they have a lot of clients and they have the best relationships for both on and off market deals.
Wow. Avery, you really gave us a lot of gems there, starting from the 10% vacation home loan, something that we definitely need to look into. We're thrilled about that, because typically it's that 20% down for the investment property. So already that's a huge, huge benefit. Love the questions. You're building my real estate investing questions, and you're absolutely right, because when I was looking at a property actually in Colorado, the agent that knew the most about the vacation area was able to tell me about mineral rights issues. Like, what would I know about those things,
Exactly.
Yeah, just very off the wall type of information that you wouldn't know otherwise, unless you're really, really familiar. You've been in the area for years and years and years. So that learning curve gets expedited because of a great agent. So that's great information. So you touched on something before. You mentioned that you're primarily focused on vacation rentals. And I've had some questions asked within this web super group relative to some struggles with the metro Airbnb versus vacation rentals. What is there a difference between the two? Tell me what your thoughts or experience is with those two, Airbnb versus vacation rentals.
There's definitely pros and cons to each. So with the non-metro markets, so that's what I invest solely in, tourism dependent vacation markets. A con for me is if anything really crazy were to happen, like I can't imagine anything crazier than coronavirus happening, but suppose it did, I would not be able to convert my rentals to a long-term. So because there are no jobs, it's only tourism driven. And if the tourists aren't coming, the tourists aren't renting the property, the tourism people, workers are not working and they're not renting a property. So the places that I invest have more short-term rentals really than they do people who live there. So that's a pro of a metro market is, even if the margins are slim, you do have the availability to convert to a long-term if you need to. However, the reason that I stopped selling real estate in Nashville, because I was only doing short-term rentals in Nashville also, is because the regulations are just so crazy. They just change all the time. And after about my fifth client, so the way that it works in Nashville is there's only certain zonings that it's allowed, and none of those zonings really had existing properties in them. So all the developers started building these condo and townhome buildings. They would pre-sell them and everybody would pay, a premium because Airbnb space is really limited in Nashville. And after about my fifth client who got into a lawsuit with either a developer or the city because they would sell these properties and then a year later they would be ready to close, but now you can't get a short-term rental permit there anymore because the regulations have changed over the course of a year. I was like, this is just not something that I want to deal with. So if you're going to do metro, you have to really, really, really do your homework and make sure that you know those regulations front and back, because it will bite you if you don't do it correctly. And you can't try to skirt the rules. I have people, I live on 30A now, so I'm far away from Nashville, but I still have people call me about Nashville and say, hey, I found this $1 million house. I'd love to do it on Airbnb. It looks great. Let's make an offer. And then I have to say, guys, that is not, you can't Airbnb that place. So, and that's another reason you really have to make sure that you're researching the agents that you're using, because an agent who's not familiar would have just said, okay, yeah, let's go get you this $1 million house. And then you're stuck. So, with metro areas, they can be super, super lucrative, but I just can't stress enough to make sure that you are very familiar with the regulations. And if usually, if you stick to the regulations and you do it the right way, you're going to be really successful.
Awesome. And you just hit on the point again of having that resource, right? So for me, and when I worked with you, Avery, what was great was when I approached you about a property in Destin, you explained to me that this portion above the highway you can rent, beneath the highway you can't short-term rent. And that's not something I would have known without doing a ton of research. And so having that resource is just so key. And so just appreciative of that. And, not that, we investors were lazy. I've done the yellow letters. I've spoken with multitudes of motivated sellers. I've contacted them. I've reached out to probate folks. And so I'm hands-on. However, this is very specific. And so when emerging into a new to you short-term rental market or vacation rental market, it is very, very key to have that resource as just another tool to be able to just expedite the process and get the right information, because the last thing you want is to buy an investment property for short-term rental and you find out it's not short-term rentable or Airbnb-able. And
right.
So just that is key.
And it happens in vacation markets also, where there's not a lot of rules about it, but and sending letters and reaching out to probate, all of those are really great strategies, but you definitely want to save that for once you are already familiar with an area. Because for example, because there's always little things that unless you have been in the market for a while, you're not going to be familiar with. Like, for example, I had a client recently who was a licensee in another state and we were working for a while together, and then they kind of dropped off, and then they came back and were like, hey, I got my Tennessee real estate license. I'm going to do my own deals. So I'm like, all right, great, cool, go for it. And probably 2 or 3 months later, I saw the property that he got. I was doing some research on Airbnb, and I found his listing. And he bought a property that was totally cute place, like really great cabin. But the problem was it was in a development that every agent in the Smokies knows has a really bad water problem. It's on a community well. And so anytime it's peak time, so summer holidays, all of the water in all of the cabins will shut off because the well runs out of water. So if,
Wow.
if he had been working with an agent who knew the market, he might have not bought that. And I don't know if he knows that he made that mistake yet. I'm sure he probably does because it's been since before Christmas, but it's that kind of stuff that can trip you up. It doesn't matter how good you are at cold calling and sending letters and getting foreclosures. If you don't have that familiarity, you can get tripped up.
Absolutely. You touched on the differences a little bit earlier with the Airbnb versus the vacation rental. And you mentioned, if, something goes down, if the sky falls out and vacation rentals were blocked or shut down, similar to COVID, that would really impact your business. So tell us a little bit about how you mitigate against that. Do you have a backup plan? What is your process and your strategy there, Avery?
For metro markets, you guys have a lot more options than an investor like I do, because you guys have healthcare, you have traveling, or, like different industries where people may need to come in town for a month at a time. So you can do medium term rentals. I have some clients who could totally Airbnb their properties short term all the time, but they choose to focus on that medium term and do really well with it. Furnished corporate rentals, they call them. For me, for our properties, like last year, how we mitigate it, because there's not, if you're buying in a vacation market, you could possibly be able to long-term rent it, possibly, maybe. But if you have, 5 or 6, it's probably not going to work. So what we do is we just have a diverse portfolio. So we've got 6 short-term rentals. Everything else is long-term. We've got a 12-unit apartment building. We've got some duplexes, single families. So when COVID hit last year and everybody was thinking, oh no, short-term rentals, here comes the crash. We felt okay about it because we had all these long-terms to offset that. Turns out that exactly the opposite happened, and short-term rentals are booming, and long-term leases aren't really worth anything right now. I mean, we'll see how that plays out with the eviction moratoriums being declared unconstitutional. But I mean, we personally didn't have any issues with having to evict people or people not paying. But the best way to avoid, losing your butt on stuff is just having a diverse portfolio.
Awesome. I mean, and that's such a gem, Avery, and that's something that I'm going to have to kind of reconfigure and work on myself. So I have just short-term and mid-term rentals, but no long-term rentals. So is there a different price point for your short-term rental versus your long-term rental for you personally? I'm sure there is.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So dollar-wise, my short-term portfolio and my long-term portfolio are worth about the same amount, but there's only 6 short terms and about 37 long terms. So, one good short term might be 500,000, but a long term might be 85, 100,000. So there's definitely a different price point there.
Wow. Wow. And as far as your tenants or your guests, there as well, right? So they'll for the short terms, what are they paying? About 1,000 a month? Oh, I'm sorry, the long terms, are they paying a little less than that or?
Right about there. So we invest in C-class long-term. So it's definitely a completely different beast than short-term rentals. But yeah, they're paying, if it's a duplex, usually like $850 a month, but single families, 1,000, 1,500, just kind of depends on the area. Those are all in Chattanooga, and it's really, really difficult to get deals in Chattanooga anymore. It's been discovered.
That's awesome. So diversification is key. Having a little bit of both has been your mitigation strategy. And you're so right, because we were expecting short terms to kind of fizzle out for a long time. March and April happened, but after that, there was almost like a revenge travel streak that has come upon us, and we're booked like 100%. So I'm just really thrilled about that.
Mm-hmm. Us too.
So before we delve into the markets, okay, so what would you say is a good ROI to be looking for in a property?
Sure. So it just depends because short terms, everything is a range. It's not like a long term where everything fits nicely into a spreadsheet down to the cent. So, I was a 15% cash on cash return is good, but a 14% is not something that you need to turn down. So I see a lot of new investors get tripped up with that, thinking, okay, well, I need it to be this 15 and it's like 14.75 and they're not cool with that. You can bring that up yourself just through proper management. So I still see people though to this day get up into the 40% cash on cash return range, just depending on what they buy and how they manage it. So, but 15 is kind of the benchmark.
Wow. Wow. And that, again, I think that's the biggest appeal for me and for a lot of people, that 15 to 40%. I mean, it's crazy. You don't usually get that with long-term rentals, So that revenue potential is huge. So guys, before we move on, if you have any questions, feel free to just drop them in the chat and I'll be sure to ask them to Avery in a moment. So with that being said, Avery, although there is that huge ROI, this is a different business model, right? This is not just landlord tenant model. This is more of a hospitality management, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. And you do have to, even if your guest is being a complete jerk, you do have to be nice because you live and die by your reviews. Yeah. And, you have to act accordingly to make sure that you get those 5-star reviews. And, most of the time, most guests are perfectly lovely and will love your place, as long as you have a clean, nice place and give them a good experience. But, there's going to be some that are going to be really difficult to deal with. And it's not if it happens, it's when. So you just kind of have to prepare yourself for that and just know going in that like, hey, if I want this much extra cash flow instead of a long-term, that these are the kinds of things I'm going to have to deal with.
Absolutely. So from the self-management perspective, it's not passive, right? You have to actively do the work. And so with that being said, I know there's a lot of hesitation, and someone approached me from the long-term world. They're afraid they're going to be called every single night that the sheets weren't fluffed enough and the plumbing's out. What is your experience and what would your advice be to that person?
I would say that's the top limiting belief of short-term rental investing. Is something going to interrupt your dinner at some point? Yes. Is it going to be every day? No. It might be once every 2 or 3 months. And when that happens, all you do is call the appropriate person. Just like if the toilet that is in the other room from me breaks in my house, I'm going to make a phone call. If the toilet 3,000 miles away from me breaks, I am also going to make a phone call. It's the same thing. So, it's just having your systems in place. And if the sheets aren't fluffed enough, if that's their complaint, say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I hope that doesn't ruin your trip, but and this is like kind of getting off in the weeds here, but don't automatically just offer a discount because somebody says something like that. It's just, something you deal with, apologize and move on.
Awesome. Awesome. So just a total different line of business, but definitely manageable and you can self-manage it. And so I encourage a lot of people and they think it's hard to self-manage, but this is a technology business also, wouldn't you say?
Definitely.
Having the ability to use your systems, use technology can really, really help. You can communicate with your cleaners. You can even communicate with a handyman with the systems that you put in place. And so with that being said, what would you consider the differences between some of the Southeast market areas that we want to discuss today? So we have the Tennessee Smokies, the Florida Panhandle area, and Alabama, the Gulf Shores.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I want to talk a bit about each of those markets. Are there any striking differences to you between the areas other than the, climate or the ecosystem, so to speak?
Yeah. So in terms of tourism, they're very, very similar. As a matter of fact, it's the exact same people in some cases that are vacationing in the Smokies and then vacationing in Destin. So from an investment standpoint, the returns are very similar in all of those markets, but the difference is going to be the seasonality. So if you're somebody who wants a very consistent amount of money coming in every month, I would recommend going to the Tennessee Smokies or like the North Georgia mountains, because the low season in those places is just going to be really January, February. The rest of the year, you know, it's pretty accessible all year. It's not like the Rockies where it snows a lot. And so those are going to be less seasonal. However, the Gulf Coast markets, they are much more seasonal. You're looking at March to October, but you will be 100% Saturday to Saturday booked in the summertime. You're going to make the same amount of money on an annual basis, but you're going to have some off time. So if you're somebody who wants to be able to use the property yourself some without cutting into your income, then I would definitely recommend going with one of the beach markets, because you're able to do that. Whereas if you want to go use your property in the Smokies some, you're probably going to have to block it off and lose a little income. But over the course of the year, it's roughly the same income for, you know, a similar size property. So it just really depends on what you're looking to do personally.
Awesome. So going back for a moment, what about property management? And I know that, again, this is something I recommend that a lot of folks utilize their resources, you know, check them out if you'd like. But self-management, I think, is the key to keeping some of your cash flow. So property managers, on average, how much are we talking about they would charge per property?
You're looking at an average of 25% of your gross, not your net, of your gross. So I don't want to say I'm anti-property manager, but I am very, very pro self-management, because at the end of the day, there's nothing that a property manager can do for you other than they're like glorified schedulers, basically. And really all they do is suck the cash flow out of the deal. So there are tons and tons of channel managers, they're called, and other automation tools to help you streamline the process so that you don't have to hire a manager. When I first started, there weren't channel managers. There was no Year Porter. There was no IGMS. If it was in existence, it was in its infancy and, you know, wasn't widely used yet. And we had to do everything manually, and it still didn't take up enough time to make it not worth doing. So if you're somebody who's really looking to bootstrap and just squeeze every dollar out of a property so that you can go buy
That's
more
me.
properties, that self-management is the way you have to go.
Awesome. And so 25% you said is average, and that's a lot, Avery. That's so much. So is that across the board? You've seen that across the Smokies and the beach, or is there a difference between those two areas? I know they're different. So
the local like brick and mortar property management companies that have been around for a long time in both markets, they get up to 40%. They're kind of coming off of that now that there's some of the more budget friendly options like Evolve that's only 10%. But there's anything from 10% up to 40. So that 25 is going to be decently average. And then you also have to take into account there are generally fees and stuff on top of that 25, like housekeeping, restock fees, things like that.
Gotcha. And so we last class, we looked at the air DNA data that was published back in September, and we learned that the drive-to markets are the way to go. And so as opposed to the fly-to markets, you know, like the Hawaii vacation may not be happening, right? Over this last year. However, I can drive somewhere for 4 to 5 hours. And this is why I really wanted you to come on first, Avery, because these are our local drive-to areas. You know, Panama City Beach, a couple, 4 or 5 hours, Destin, 4 or 5 hours, 30A. Same with the Smokies, even closer, as well as Blue Ridge. And so as far as the property and the property sizes, what have you seen have the biggest demand and the biggest ROI in terms of 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom, 4-bedroom, so on and so forth?
The highest return on investment comes at the 4-bedroom and up mark. You don't have to go any bigger than like 8 bedrooms unless you're getting a really good deal on an 8-bedroom. But that 4, 5, 6, 7 bedrooms is really the sweet spot. And 1 through 3 bedrooms, will totally do what you need it to do, but just the 4 bedrooms and up do have a higher return on investment, because at that point you're over doubling your income, but your expenses are only like 15% more. But, if you're just starting out, a 1-bedroom condo, 2-bedroom condo will definitely, get you over that next step that you need to take in your real estate investing. So don't discount that just because I said 4 bedrooms and up is the best. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
That's excellent. And I love that point. You just dropped another nugget. So you can over double your ROI, and then, it's only 15% increase in, expenses. So that is awesome. What about some tertiary markets? I call them kind of secondary, tertiary markets. For instance, they're not our top, more established markets. So we know that the Tennessee Smokies are established, right? They've been around for years and years and years, where you have single family homes that have been, vacation rentals for decades, right?
Right.
Additionally, you have same thing with the beach, Destin. We have those markets as well. And I've been looking at the price points, Avery. They're kind of out of control. And so the market's hot, which is great. What about the outskirts? I saw on AirDNA, they had mentioned some other places that are a little bit further out. I think there's one called White Hill or Whitville in Tennessee. It looks like another mountain town. Any thoughts on some of those outskirt type areas? Any concerns?
So as far as the Smokies are concerned, I still tell people, you need to be within a drive time of either the Strip in Gatlinburg or the Strip in Pigeon Forge, because that is where all of that tourism is coming. The outskirts of that area would be like Townsend on one end, Cosby on the east side, and then Douglas Lake on the north side. So I would not personally go further than those. And the prices are definitely really high compared to what they were 3 or 4 years ago. But most of the appreciation in the market has been driven by investor interest. So it's all investors that are bidding on these things that are driving the prices up. So at some point, the numbers will stop working, but we're not there yet, because, if you've got 20 investors bidding on one property, yes, it is more expensive than it was 2 or 3 years ago, but the numbers are still working well enough that many people are bidding on them. So there's still plenty of deals to be had. You just have to look at it from a standpoint of, okay, at what number am I able to make money off of this property at the price I'm able to get it for? If yes, proceed. If no, wait for the next one. So, a $500,000 property numbers up to $550,000. So just because you're not getting 20% off the list price doesn't make it not a good deal. It just means you're paying over asking. So you have to analyze it not based on how much of a discount can I get, but am I making the money that I want to make at the price I'm able to get this property for?
Wow, what a paradigm shift, right, Avery? So
yes,
as far as, the way we were taught in our, I guess, worldview is to get it as low as possible. But ultimately, if you have that revenue coming in, this is a business, right? Are you going to be able to, make the mortgage? Are you going to be able to, make something on top? That's definitely a different paradigm shift. This is awesome. Okay, so I do see some questions in here. Let's see. So Avery, what is your favorite channel manager?
We personally use Your Porter. IGMS is another really good one, but Your Porter is the best one. Is the one that we have landed on after using a bunch. It plays the nicest with everything else.
You know what I like also about Your Porter? It's like $7 per listing.
Yeah. It's affordable.
So cheap.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So yeah, that's another place to definitely look at how you're utilizing your resources and tools and not going overboard to make sure you're still getting some of that cash in hand. Okay, and we spoke about this, the ideal size of a house, number of guests it can accommodate. So the ideal size, Avery mentioned, was a 4-bedroom. That's going to be where you hit the best ROI. However, like you said, if you have a little couple that's coming with a child, there's always going to be, you know, a demand for even the smaller units as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Let's see. How is the Blue Ridge market compared to the Smokies? Do you have any thoughts on that? Is it easier to get a cabin in Blue Ridge over the Smokies? I heard STRs are banned outside of the Central District. Blue Ridge, how big of an area is the Central Business District? This is a loaded question.
Yeah.
I
So
saw
lots of
something
questions.
come down about that too. So regulation is huge, right, Avery? Again,
Right.
we spoke about that. Regulation before the numbers. Before I even look at the numbers, what are the regulations? Can I even short-term rent in this area? That is huge. So what are your thoughts on Debbie's questions?
Okay, so the first part of it, how is Blue Ridge compared to the Smokies? So it's about 10% cheaper, and you're probably going to make exactly about 10% less on the gross income. So it's very, very similar. It is just as competitive as the Smokies. So I get a lot of clients who come to me and want to buy in the Smokies, get their nose bloodied a little bit, and then they say, okay, well, let's go buy with your agent in Blue Ridge. And then they think it's going to be easier, and it's not easier to get a property. So I just want to set that expectation up front. All the markets, it's difficult to get a property. That's just the way the market is right now. But it's a great market. The returns are really similar to the Smokies, just kind of like I mentioned, it's just, all across the board, numbers are a little bit lower, including purchase prices. Banned outside the central business district. So you're not really going to want to be like in Blue Ridge proper so much as like just the North Georgia mountains area. So that's Blue Ridge, Ellijay, Helen, Morganton, Mineral Bluff, all of that. There's lots of really great properties out there. And most of the view properties are going to be well outside the city limits anyway. So that's not really going to affect you as much.
Awesome. Awesome. And you know what? Morganton actually made the list on AirDNA up and coming.
I saw that.
Yeah, they're expecting
Mm-hmm.
short-term rentals to really explode there. So I actually saw a piece of land there. I was considering it, but when you have undeveloped land in the in the mountains, it's like, oh, am I
Yes.
ready for this?
Yeah, it's crazy. And I get a lot of people too. Like it's easy to go buy a lot at the beach and build something because
Right.
it's like set up for that. But in the mountains, just, you've got wells, you have septics. And sometimes like I've got a girl on my team, Julie, who is one of the smartest investors I've ever met. And she's like, I'm going to build a few cabins. So she's super experienced. It took her 3 tries to hit water drilling a well, which is like $30,000. And a lot of people, builders will say, oh yeah, I can build this for 250 a square foot. But what you're not seeing, what they're not including in that is when these properties are on the sides of mountains, you can be well into the 6 figures just on grading and retaining walls before you even get into that 250 a square foot to build. And that's just an arbitrary number. That's not a real number. I just made it up. But so building in the mountain markets is very tricky. So be conscious of that if you're looking at land in the mountain markets.
Okay, that's that's going to be a great one for another call because some of those mountain ranges, driving up them, it's really sketchy. Am I going to live or not?
Yes.
Just driving. So I can imagine them hauling lumber and all of that. That's got to be definitely a challenge that might, hike the price up. Okay, in the Q&A panel, it looks like, let's see, there's a chat and there's a Q&A. Do they merge?
I don't know. We do have, it looks like we have one open question from Dexter in the Q&A.
When I click on it, Dexter, it just pops away and I'm having a hard time getting it to stay on my screen. So do me a favor, can you please copy and paste it into the chat instead? Because for some reason the Q&A, and I'm looking at all of my monitors to see maybe
it's popping up for me. I can just read it out and answer it. Mm-hmm.
Oh, awesome. Go ahead, Avery.
Okay. So Dexter says, should I buy a property to do short-term rental, or should I rent the property to do short-term rental? Which would you recommend? So the strategy that you're referencing is called rental arbitrage. And it's going to be difficult to do in any of the vacation markets. You'll have a better time of it in the metro markets, because the vacation markets, they're not going to rent to you. Somebody who has a property that will make a good short-term rental, they're not going to rent it long-term to an arbitrager. They're just going to put it on one of those zillion property managers that are local. So arbitrage can be a good way to get some cash flow going in order to, go buy more properties, but it's also going to take you a long time to be allowed to use that income for a loan pre-qual. So I recommend, if you can swing it, trying to buy one, because arbitrage at the end of the day, if that's your end goal, is just renting a bunch of properties and Airbnb-ing them and making money that way. That's just creating a job for yourself. Whereas actually buying the property and holding it and renting it on Airbnb is actually creating wealth for yourself. So it's a great way to get some cash flow going. It's going to be a little bit slow going because most lenders are going to require 2 years of short-term rental income to be able to use that to pre-qual you for a property. So it would be a long-term play. And I definitely recommend buying if you can.
Yeah, and that's a great question. That falls in line with my next question, actually. So if Avery, if I can keep my W-2, do some arbitrage and scrape together as much as possible, say 20,000 to get started. So if you had 20,000 today to get started, and I know that you had said in the past, the average home is about 400,000 in these markets. You're going to get a great ROI, but 400,000 is quite a bit. We're approaching $500,000. So if you had 20,000 to get started, what would you do with that? What would be your strategy, Avery?
Condo in Panama City, 100%. You can still get good deals on condos. You can still get really close to, if not beachfront for that. You can get a 1-bedroom for, so it would be like a 10% down vacation home loan probably on a condo. Most lenders are not doing condotel loans right now, conventional, but if you want to hit me after the chat, I do have a portfolio lender who will still do 10% down on condos, on condotels. So that's awesome. But I would definitely start with, and you also might be able to get a condo for around that in the Gulf Shores area. So I would start there, because there's actually a lot of opportunity for condos right now because of the changes that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac made in, I believe it was November, in terms of not financing condotels anymore. So it's really, really difficult for most people to find financing without having to put, 25, 30% down. But there are a couple lenders out there, one of who I work with often, who can do it. So there's definitely opportunity there in the condo space.
Wow, that's awesome. So that's something I'll definitely hit you up on too, Avery. So really thrilled about that. So condo in Panama City, condo in Gulf Shores, been itching to get into Gulf Shores as well. So that's exciting.
Yeah. Destin might be a little tough on the condos in that price point. There might be something pop up, but Panama City Beach, you're going to have some options.
So you're thinking they're about in the $200,000 range or so. You can probably find something.
You can probably find a 1-bedroom. Yeah.
Okay. So what percent of your clients, I know you work primarily with short-term rentals, vacation rentals. Am I correct to say you do not really do any single family, homeowner type of real estate?
Nope,
so what
zero.
So what percent of your investors buy a second property from you? Because this is kind of a thing, we investors, we like to buy one, then we like to buy another. What percentage would you say?
I would say upwards of 70%.
Nice.
Like, it's very rare that people only buy one.
Nice. And what I loved about working with you too, Avery, is you don't just, send me a property and say, there and go, right? As an investor myself, I can find properties too, but you have such a depth and wealth of knowledge as well as resources. So what I appreciate is your courses. After, we will sign the papers, and then you offer a free course for your for your buyers to sit in, to go step by step on what the next steps are, and even a property management, like how to do DIY it. Here are the tools. Here's what you recommend. Here, I just love that. So you're such a resource, and I haven't seen anything like it before, and that's why I really love working with you. So, what do you wish you had known that you know now?
Oh gosh. I haven't had too many like big calamities, but I really just wish I would have started earlier, whether it was long term or short term. But even everybody's like, oh my God, I wish I would have bought 4 or 5 years ago. The prices were so much better. Well, even 4 or 5 years before that, they were even cheaper. So I really wish that I would have figured this out sooner in life. But it is what it is.
Say la vie. Right. So now is a good time to start.
Yeah.
So for those who have not done so, definitely getting our ducks in a row. So where can this group find you, Avery?
You can find me easily on my website, theshorttermshop.com, or on Instagram at theshorttermshop.
Awesome. Awesome. And so my very last question for you is, so in the sea of millions and millions of Airbnbs and short-term rentals, vacation rentals, we all know that the first impression is key. And a lot of times folks, they'll find that property that they love, that they go to year after year after year. However, if they're seeing your property for the very first time, you really get four chances at a first impression. It's those four pictures. And you want them to be the best four pictures. My philosophy is look and book. I want you to look at my pictures and just book. Do not proceed, just look and book. So outside of professional photographs, what are some of the little amenities or little gems or just anything that you recommend that your homeowners do to, or your investors do, to kind of have their property stand out from the crowd a bit?
Aside from pictures, you just want to make sure that you make it pretty clear in your photos and your initial description that you are remote work friendly, that you have good internet, because that's a big thing for people now, especially in those drivable markets. A lot of people are working remotely. Their kids are going to school remotely. So they're like, oh, I'm just going to cruise down to Destin for 2 weeks, but I need to be able to work from there. So that's a big one. Another cool thing that people do that is not terribly expensive. It'll probably, it may cost you $1,000, but like an Instagrammable wall. So I don't have these in my cabins because they're tongue and groove. I want to do that, but a lot of my old Nashville clients will have like a mural that says "Welcome to Nashville," or something that people want to take a picture in front of, and they want to Instagram it, basically. So when they're scrolling through properties and they see, oh, cool, there's a picture wall. That's people love that. People love that. So I think that's a really good, $1,000 investment that will make a big difference.
Awesome. Two very, very, very good ideas that definitely are implementable, and we can take action on that right away. So having indications that you are remote work friendly, as well as an Instagrammable wall. And another thing that I tend to believe, and I'm sure you do too, is just to be forthcoming with everything, So say you have that 100-year-old home, and it's a cute home in this vacation area. It's very cute cabin, but the door is kind of creaky. It's 100-year-old. It's just make that, plain and upfront. Be very upfront. This is an old house. Things will creak. And so the guests will know what they're walking into. And you have said their
absolutely.
Right. It's when they don't know and they're expecting new construction, so they feel blindsided. And so that's where I think we end up seeing some trouble, is not having the expectations set.
Yes, definitely. I've got a property that is on an absolutely terrifying road, and I make sure that we are slapping people in the face with that information like 6 times in the listing. And then when they initially send an inquiry, we're like, hey, you saw us on a steep road, right? And so that way there's no negative surprises. You don't want your guests to be surprised by anything negative. And we bought that one because it was such a good deal. It has an amazing view, but the road's scary to get there. So as long as they know up front, then you're going to be in good shape.
Awesome. Awesome. And so looking forward to working with you some. I know you have some off-market opportunities that come your way every now and then. Are you at liberty to share about that, or is that?
Yes, I can. So we have a lot of off-market new constructions in the Smokies. We have, so Q4 of last year, we got about 60 people under contract on them. Q1 of this year, we've probably done another 40. I've got 3 more developments coming up, and these are developments they come fully furnished, ready to go, super cute. And they're only available to short-term shop clients. And we are working on, and then we also get, off-market existing construction too, just from, the usual channels and past clients and things that are only available to our clients. And we are working on the exact same situation with the new construction in North Georgia. So keep an eye out on that too.
Nice. I did not know about that. So I will keep an eye out. So Avery, thank you. Thank you. Happy Women's International Month.
Oh, yes.
Or Women's Month altogether. I so appreciate the value you have added to this group today. So we spoke about the Alabama market, Gulf Shores, Florida Panhandle, as well as the Tennessee Smokies, and you added some of the Blue Ridge, Georgia area. So looking forward to exploring some of that and snatching up what we can in the upcoming months. Look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
All righty, so I will end. You guys get 4 more minutes. Oh, okay, it looks like we have a question comment. I'd like to know the lenders' names too. Okay, so I can actually send that. If you guys wouldn't mind dropping your email in the chat, I'll be sure to share that with Avery and send it to, we have a little group as well, a Facebook group. And I know Avery has an amazing Facebook group too.
We do.
And we can definitely share that information. I'll also be sending out in our group, I have a little kit, a luxury short-term rental kit of the items and the stuff that I like to buy to place in our short-term rentals. I think that will be really, really helpful. And Avery, do you mind if I share about your calculator? Oh my God.
Yes, please do. Please do. I'll put a
link.
Oh
my God, guys, Avery has developed this amazing short-term rental calculator for our markets that we discussed today. It's on her website, the short-term shop. Oh, there it is, cash flow calculator. Y'all, okay, I'm talking about, I was using back of the napkin, all kinds of spreadsheets, and she has it right there. And so really, really, really handy. Because when I go to an investor, and I'm just going to add this, and this is a little sidebar. When I go to an investor-friendly real estate agent, I like to have my ducks in a row. You want to go in and you say, okay, I'm looking for a condo. I'm looking for a single family home within 2 miles of Panama City Beach downtown. This is my price range. And so come with your ducks in a row, with your strategy, ready. And that experience, real estate investor friendly real estate agent will know how to direct you. You let them know you're looking not for you for personal use, but for primarily short-term rental. And so come ready with that information. The cash flow calculator, I think, is another tool to add to your tool belt. And Avery has added the link in here as well. Play around with that. We'll look at that at our next course as well. We'll be meeting in a couple of weeks on Tuesday at 9 a.m. So looking forward to that. Enough of my rambling, y'all. 2 minutes, I'm giving it back to you. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Avery. Looking forward to connecting again. Y'all have a good rest of your Tuesday.